Welcome to the On Assignment podcast, where we help men level up as leaders. I'm John Harvey, here with my co-host Will Drlik. Good to see you, Will. How you doing?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing good, man. Episode number 3. Excited to get started on this. It's a subject that's near and dear to, I know, both of our hearts. And we started actually talking about this subject in episode number 2. And there was a lot there, so we decided to have a part 2 today. So this will be a follow-up on our last episode where we're going to discuss how can a man manage the daily demand on his time and attention.
Yeah.
How can a guy actually master the art of the daily grind, right? And we talked about this last episode, where this is the question that I get most from young guys is, how do I balance everything I've got going? All of these assignments on my life, my work, my family, my marriage, my health, all of these different areas of a man's life. How do you balance all of that? And last episode, we talked about the fact that there's really no real balance to this. It's more of a healthy flow. And we're going to go deeper into this today because this is something that in a man's life will cause tension.
Yeah.
There's a tension that this creates, and it impacts the way we make our decisions. It impacts the way we live our lives at such a deep level that it deserves some more time. But understanding that this is a tension that you will always have to face makes it to where if you learn how to face that tension now, you'll be in a lot better position.
Yeah.
Making your decisions and how you decide how you're going to live out your life during that daily grind, right?
Yeah. It's something that you're always going to have to manage.
Yeah.
You know, the tension's not going to go away.
Right. That's right. Yeah. There's a difference between a tension that you manage and a problem that you solve.
Yep.
There's certain things in life where they come up and you recognize that this is a problem and I need to solve it and then move forward. Right. Yeah. But then there's other areas in our lives where it's like, hey, this is a tension that I'm going to have throughout my life, and I'm not going to solve it and be done with it. Although a lot of times we'd like to not have that tension at work in our life, right?
Yeah.
But this is going to be something that I need to learn to manage, and I can actually manage it in such a way to where the tension builds me up, makes me stronger, and it becomes a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've said to me before that you heard a quote of, as men, we're going to have to figure out tensions that we have to manage and distinguish them between problems that we have to solve. And as men, a lot of times we're born to be problem solvers.
Yeah.
And if there's something that feels off in our life or is giving us that tension, that pressure, we're always like, what can we do to fix it?
Right.
What can we take away?
Right.
What can I stop doing to make this tension go away? And so really finding out and figuring out and being able to discern between tensions that you need to manage and problems that you need to solve. That's something that we need to figure out. And once we can figure that out, it's super helpful and beneficial for us and our relationships.
Yeah.
Because there are problems that we need to solve as men, for sure.
Right.
100%. But there's also tensions that we need to manage.
Yeah.
And how do we distinguish between those two?
Yeah. And there's a lot of freedom that comes from identifying what it is that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because if you're dealing with a tension that needs to be managed, like it's a problem that needs to be solved, you're going to feel like I'm not doing what I need. You're going to feel deficient. You're going to feel less than, because you're never going to get it solved. And you're like it's going to reflect on yourself. So being able to discern, is this a tension or a problem, is really important, because that way you're not struggling with the wrong issue.
Yep.
You're able to actually struggle with this as a problem. And so we're going to solve this problem, and then we're going to know that we're done with that problem and move on. But with attention, then you realize that, oh, I'm not the only one that struggles with this.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that has this tension. This is something that all men have. And therefore I can manage it, and I can actually watch the way other men manage that tension and really learn from that and grow as well, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, the the big thing here, though, is that we understand that in that place of managing this tension, that we'll have this tension as long as we're men on assignment.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there's going to be an assignment in your life, no matter what season you're in. You could be single, married, with children, married with adult children, and or retired. Whatever season of life you're in, as long as you're actually living on assignment, you're going to have this tension, because there's going to be things that pull at you from different directions that create that tension in your life. And so learning how to manage those is really important. And whenever we're learning to manage or sustain something that's going to be long term, we have to actually really get to the root, or really get to the foundational things that will help us in that process of learning to manage it. And as men, that place is our heart.
Mm-hmm.
The control center of who we are is our heart. It's not our feelings. It's not our preference. It's not what we want.
Yeah, what our flesh desires.
It's not what our flesh desires. Right? Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a place where we're actually seeing our hearts change. And then from that place, that core within inside of us, that place changes, and then things begin to change from the inside out.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to managing this tension that we feel with the demands on our time and attention, we really need to look at our heart in this, because oftentimes if we're making decisions based upon how we feel or what we want to do, we won't step into that tension well.
Yeah.
We won't manage it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And nowadays with technology and all of these instant gratifications, it's really hard to sacrifice some things. Sacrifice some things that will potentially reap reward and sow some really, really tough seed. With technology at our fingertips, we can have whatever we want when we want it.
Yeah.
And it's not the real thing, but a lot of times men confuse that counterfeit with the real thing nowadays.
Right. Yeah. The ability to get what you want when you want it right away has affected the population to such a level of negativity, to where we don't really think about things that require a lot of effort in order to get the reward for.
Yeah.
We don't like stepping into those things where it's hard at the beginning, but you're doing this hard work so that at some point, someday, you'll reap the reward of the effort you're putting into it now.
Yeah.
It's like the challenge of gardening, right? We talked about this example before the podcast, where a guy has to go in and prepare the soil. So you're tilling up the soil, pulling out the rocks, you're prepping the soil to make it good soil, and then you're planting seeds, right? Yeah. And you're tending that garden, but you don't see any type of fruit from that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. The quote that we were talking about before was, you don't eat the fruit the same day that you plant the seed.
Yeah.
And that is so true.
Right.
There's a level of sacrifice that we have to step into.
Yeah.
To reap something.
Right.
And to eat the fruit.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that I saw that quote on Instagram and it just hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, that is so true.
Right. Well, and if you start living your life in that type of a paradigm or mindset where everything comes right away, then it's hard for you to really understand when things don't happen that way.
Yeah.
And I look at the difference in time and the nature of how quick things are. And literally I can order something on Amazon at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening and have it on my doorstep the next morning.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me how fast things move.
Even something as simple as music. Like you used to have to go to the store to buy a CD or a record. Right. And now you search it on Spotify, it's right there.
Yeah.
Like,
if I told you about what it used to take to get a VCR,
yeah.
When VCRs first came out, like to rent a VCR, first of all, there was no way we could ever afford a VCR when they first came out. So we'd go rent one. I remember the first time me and a girlfriend, we were going to rent a movie and we were so excited. So you go to rent the VCR, you had to put like a deposit down on the VCR. It was like $50 because you had to
a security deposit.
A security deposit.
Like you're renting a house or something.
Yeah. And so you'd go and you'd actually put a deposit down on a VCR, sign your life away. Then you'd actually have to pick out a movie, which there was limited movies on VCRs,
Yeah.
At first. So it was just, but now you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, you click a button and you've got every movie you could ever want to see on streaming, right? Yeah. So we use that as an illustration because that is, if that's the environment that you're in and that you've adapted to, and you've actually really gotten used to that being the way life is, then the tension of really being able to make decisions as to how you're going to build your life and what you're going to invest your time into today, your time and your attention into, and handle that balance, then it's going to be very difficult for you to understand the fact that at a heart level, you have to really be willing to sacrifice now so that later you'll reap the reward.
Mm-hmm.
At a heart level in all of this, it's important for us men to understand that the assignments of God on our life will always require more of us than what we would truly want to give normally.
Yeah.
And we have to understand, though, that as we learn how to do that, as we learn how to step into the sacrifice required to fulfill the assignment on our lives, that's what it's going to take for us to successfully accomplish and fulfill the things that we're here for.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we're talking about the heart because you're going to have to dig deep in these moments.
Yeah.
There's going to be some people that see what's going on, and they're going to come at you and say, what are you doing? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Why are you sacrificing this for what?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to know within your heart, like, this is who I am. This is the process that I'm in. This is the man that I want to be.
Right.
And this is the path that I'm on. And you're going to have to dig deep, and it's going to be a heart posture that you're going to have to carry forward.
Right. Yeah. Because the natural tendency would be to step into those things that give you instant gratification and are like readily, like the fruit is readily available. Like I'm planting the seed today and I'm getting the fruit today. Right. Yeah. But ultimately though, when we've experienced that tension, that's where the tension's created. It's like, I can do what I want to do or what I should do.
Yeah.
And as men, we need to be willing to learn and grow into that place where our hearts are ready to choose stepping into the sacrifice, stepping into the surrender, stepping into the thing that costs me, so that I can actually successfully accomplish the assignment of God on my life. I love the story of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was one who prepared the way for Jesus. In the Bible, you hear he was Jesus's cousin. There's this whole story about John the Baptist. But the line that comes to mind that he said was, as Jesus was becoming more and more known, John the Baptist's role was his assignment was actually, he was accomplishing his assignment.
Yeah.
And he kind of gives us a picture to what his mindset was through that time of fulfilling his assignment. When he says that when it came to his role and Jesus's role, he says, I must decrease that he may increase. In other words, he said, I'm actually living my life sacrificially, laying my life down right now so that Jesus could increase. My assignment is not about me.
Yeah.
My assignment is about much more than me. And so my assignment requires me to decrease, to lay my life down so that he may increase. And I love the heart of John the Baptist because he's willingly, knowingly understanding that the tension on his day, on how his time and attention was spent, Did he want to do what he wanted to do? Yeah, I'm sure he had his own dreams, his own desires, his own will of what he wanted his life to be like. But yet he was laying that down to pursue the assignment that God had given him. And that assignment was to be a prophet,
Yeah.
to prepare the way for Jesus, to tell people about what was coming, and to baptize people and to lead them and to send them in Jesus's direction.
And he was so in tune with who he was and who his assignment was.
Yeah.
And like nowadays, he was a famous guy.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, he would be viral.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
John would be viral. He's
Yeah.
a very well-known guy. People came to him.
Yeah.
He was baptizing people. He baptized Jesus,
Yeah.
the Son of God.
Right.
And for him to be so in tune with his assignment and who God called him to be,
Yeah.
and for him to have the humility to step down when I'm
Mhm.
sure there was other tension that he was facing of wanting his own glory,
Yeah.
not the glory for the Father. And so
Yeah.
just really good to model after that and
Yeah.
to live that out, that I'm going to decrease so that he can increase. It's huge.
Yeah. And ultimately, he never shrank back from that,
No.
to the point where, he knew that if his assignment was to go tell the government official that he was in the wrong, and God asked him to do that, that's what he was going to do, even if it cost him going to prison.
Yeah.
And then ultimately giving his life.
Yeah.
And so that element of like, I must decrease that he may increase, really kind of speaks to us when it comes to the heart behind the decisions we make on a daily basis, and trying to balance this flow between what I want to do and what I need to do.
Yeah.
How I'm going to spend my time and my attention. I'm going to use my energy and my money, and all of this tension that we have to learn to handle. And so the heart behind that, though, I thought was so clearly stated in John the Baptist's declaration of, I must decrease that he may increase. And I feel like that's a good template for me to take then and apply to my life.
Yeah.
Because what we see throughout all of Scripture is a encouragement and a leading to for us to surrender and to sacrifice and to really lay our lives down for others in order to fulfill our assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we be the men who live our lives on assignment as husband, father, men, leaders, business owners, whatever it is your assignments are right now? How can you be a man who walks in that place on assignment with a heart that's right, that says, I am going to choose to lay my life down on a daily basis in order to fulfill the assignment of God on my life, rather than choosing. So you're choosing a path of self-sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
rather than a path of self-fulfillment and self-centeredness.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's easy to talk about. It's kind of easy to almost even glorify that sacrificial position. But when it comes to you making those small decisions on a daily basis to actually walk that out, it's tough. But it starts with your heart. And that's what we're talking about today. So how can we be those men who live our lives with that mantra of, I must decrease so that my family may increase, so that my faith may increase, so that the people around me may increase?
Yeah. I think it starts with seeing examples of this. And the biggest example is seeing Jesus.
Yeah.
How, he literally went to the cross, surrendered everything so that we can have everything.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, and then also for me, what's been super powerful is just surrounding myself, immersing myself in other men where I have seen them do that.
Yeah.
And seen them surrender things, and to surround yourself with men who have been in a certain stage of life that and they've already been through the stage of life that I'm in, and seeing where they've surrendered and what that surrender has sowed for them and the fruit that's come from that.
Yeah.
And so getting yourself around community and examples of men who have surrendered something and to see the fruit, because there's going to be fruit from surrender.
Right.
There's never a fruitless life from someone that's surrendered.
That's right.
So if you surround yourself with get some good mentors, get involved with the church, get plugged in. Maybe it's at the workplace and there's a really, really good, strong leader who you trust and who has just is an example of someone that you want to be in the future. Surround yourself, start asking questions, go out to coffee with them, see what they've sacrificed, and because they have fruit,
Right. Yeah. That's what I love about Jesus's leadership is that he walked out and fulfilled the various things that he called us to do.
Yeah.
And so we're not following a leader who's like asking us to do something that he would never do. And Jesus asked us to, he said that, if you want to find life, then you've got to lose your life.
Yeah.
He said that I didn't come to be served, but I came to serve and to lay my life down for many. And we'll probably say this time after time after time again on our podcast, because that's the example that Jesus set for us, and he calls us to live out.
Yeah.
And so you hear Jesus's call and his commission over our lives to be men who lay our lives down. Mm-hmm. No greater love has any man than to lay down his life for a brother, right? Husbands, love your wives as Jesus loves the church, right? And laid his life down for them.
Yeah, that's the theme.
Yeah.
That's the theme of what we want to bring to the table, because it's transformative.
Yes.
It's
absolutely.
It's how you change the hearts.
Right. And if I see that at work in the life of another man, and I see the fruit of it actually in his life, then it encourages me to say, I can trust this process. It's like, going skydiving. It's like you're standing, you take this little class, you take the class and you're standing there and you're like, you're nervous as all get out. And you see a plane take off the runway and the group in front of you is going up, and you lose sight of the plane once it hits, it's up at 14,000 feet. You can't see the plane anymore. You can't see the people jumping out. All of a sudden you just see these little black spots up in the sky, and you realizing that their parachutes are opening up. And you're like,
oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. You're like, okay, now I just saw that guy get onto the plane, and he's obviously jumped out of the plane, and I see him land. If he can take that kind of step, I can do the same thing. And it didn't take away the tension of it. It didn't take away the nervousness of it, but it allowed me to see someone else do it and be like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Well, and it gives you the trust that can happen for you. And you have two choices. You can stay on the ground and be safe and be fine. But that man that went in the parachute, he has that experience.
Right. Yeah.
He has that experience that you don't have.
Yeah.
And so you can trust God in that experience, that he's going to provide that same experience for you. He's going to provide that protection, that comfort for you as he provided for that guy.
That's right. Yeah. And there's a certain level of incredible inspiration that comes from seeing men who lay down their lives.
Yeah.
There's an incredible, something rises up within you that says, that's the kind of man I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen the same way with a man who chooses the opposite. When the guy who says, I must increase so that everyone else can decrease, there's nothing in me that stirs my heart about that. Mm-mm. But everything stirs my heart about the man who's willing to lay his life down.
Yeah.
And that's because God not only calls us to that, but he wired that within us.
Yeah.
He's actually made us to be men who could bear burdens, men who had to be strong, who had to be able to take on challenges and burdens in order to provide and to protect and to lead. And so we're made for this. Mm-hmm. We're made for this type of life. We were not made for a self-centered, self-seeking, instant gratification life, but we were actually made to plow ground, plant seeds, to tend a crop, nurture the land, and see a harvest.
Yeah.
That was the mandate from the very beginning in creation. And so we're made for this. And when we see it in operation, it's like, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. The men that I looked up to when I was a young, young husband and a young father and a young businessman, the men I looked up to, I didn't have, a lot of context as to how to do all of this stuff outside of my own experience. And in order to grow in that, I looked at the men around me and saw how they lived
Yeah.
and how they made decisions and saw how they showed up. And it was like, that's how they do it. I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. The most in the fire service, the most drawn, and I think this just applies just if you're witnessing a leader or seeing someone in a leadership position, but the servant leaders, they have the biggest draw from their men and the most trust from their men.
Right.
Of a leader that's willing to sacrifice everything for his crew.
Right. Yeah.
And whatever your crew is, whatever your job is, but if there's a leader, those leaders that exhibit servant leadership, that are willing to sacrifice anything for the outcome of their guys and their people, it's huge.
Right.
And that is the most tight-knit crew that I've ever seen, that I've ever been a part of, is when we have a servant leader.
Yeah.
And to witness that. And it's such a powerful characteristic to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so good. And our listeners should understand their influence.
Yeah.
That when you live your life this way and you are you're leading from a heart that says, I will lay my life down for the people around me. And you're stepping into difficult challenges. You're stepping into weights of responsibility that would be easy to say, I don't want those things, and I'm going to be self-serving and self-centered. But you actually go the opposite direction and you step into those things that people are watching you.
Yeah.
And just like you're saying, and like the men that I still remember their names from when I was young, those are the men that you're being watched, and people are paying attention, and they're learning and growing from you. So don't ever underestimate the influence that we have as men, because there's people that are watching, and they're learning, and they're catching what it is that you've got.
Yeah.
So this process of seeing the example of Jesus, seeing the men around us who are living this out is so important, because we're not alone. And if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
And as you step into it, then you step into this process of beginning to have this mentality of, I must decrease so that my wife may increase.
Yeah.
My children may increase. My business may increase. At that point, you begin to step into it because you've seen others do it. There's this point of trust where you have to trust the process.
Yeah.
We've really got to trust that the way that things were designed is going to work as I take these steps of faith, as I say yes to these assignments, as I take on these responsibilities. There's going to be challenges that arise that are going to try to bring in discouragement, like we've addressed in our first episode. Those challenges are going to try and cause us to want to go the other way, but yet we've got to head into the challenge knowing that the process will reap a reward.
Yeah. And you got to understand the process. We've talked a little bit about this, but it's not going to be instant.
Right.
And some seeds that you plant take a while to sow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me personally, seeing testimonies of men being vulnerable and stepping into something and bringing things to the light that need to be brought to the light.
Right.
For me in my marriage has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
And seeing the fruit from those testimonies is very powerful and builds encouragement.
Right.
To know that what I see in their life, I can see in my life, even though we've made some mistakes, but just bringing things to the light, being vulnerable, walking through that process, especially with the relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a grieving process that you have to go through, but bringing things to the light is extremely healing.
Right.
For you personally, your marriage, your relationship, but also your relationship with the Lord. So
yeah, and it's a place that, like, the word vulnerability is something that we don't like as men. We don't ever want to be vulnerable, but there's an understanding that if we're going to see our marriage grow and our marriage become strong, that we have to become more intimate with our wives. We have to go deeper with our wives and grow closer to our wives.
Yes.
And that process is one where it's easy when it's Romeo and Juliet phase.
Yeah.
Mr. Romeo, I can woo my wife, win her heart. And
is that the honeymoon phase?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Yeah. Evidently,
then
yeah.
you get a year in.
Yeah, where you're feeling pretty solid.
Let's start unpacking some things.
That's right. And at that point, then it's like there's so much to do, and that's a point where most guys would rather leave that on the back burner, the vulnerability part.
Yeah, grind harder at work.
Yep.
Distract yourself with some certain things,
because it's easier to go to work than it is to hash things out with your wife.
For a lot of men, yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of men, yeah, not everyone, but yeah. And in general, and so the ability to understand that I'm going to decrease here by being vulnerable with my wife, by bringing things into light with communication, increased intimacy, and in that place, I'm going to actually, though, be planting seeds that are going to bring good fruit into my marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a healing that takes place. There's a testimony to see God's goodness in that, in the healing process. And then there's what I love to see is just the power of testimony to testimony to testimony.
Right.
Someone's testimony encounters me, which encourages me to get in a vulnerable place with my wife. Then the healing process takes place.
Yeah.
And then another couple comes into our life that may be experiencing the same thing or something similar to what we were experiencing.
Right.
We get to speak truth and speak God's goodness and to tell them that there is power and there's healing and there's so much good that can take place from this.
Yeah.
And it just keeps on going.
Right.
Which is so cool to see.
Yeah. But you don't know that when you do it.
No. Nope.
You're like, if I tell my wife that I've been struggling with porn, and there's a way to disclose that type of thing. Or if you tell your wife that you've been you've hid some things financially from her, whatever the things are that we deal with and we want to hide.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of trust to bring those things out into the light.
Yep.
But guaranteed 100% that when we walk in the light and we're vulnerable, we choose the path of like, I'm going to surrender my will and my desire for the benefit of my marriage.
Yep.
And we take the hard path of vulnerability. It's going to strengthen your marriage, and it will ultimately pay good dividends.
Yeah.
But you have to trust the process.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of work. That process involves a lot of work. But if you choose at that moment to not step into it at all, and rather than step into it, you step back or you shrink back, then ultimately you're setting your marriage up to be either a very shallow marriage that's just based upon, hey, we've got kids and we live together, but it's like living life together, but all together separate.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want in our marriages. And so being able to trust that, okay, I've seen other men do this. Jesus has called me to do this.
Yep.
And so I'm going to live my life in surrender and sacrifice. And so I'm going to actually be vulnerable and talk with my wife so that we can work our way through this.
Yeah.
That's putting effort into the moment that will have rewards down the road that you're trusting that's going to happen. Yep. And the decisions that we make as a couple, as a family, is another area where this is super powerful. Trusting that as you make hard decisions today, that those decisions will ultimately bear good fruit in your life, your family, and your legacy.
Yeah.
The decision that we made to have my wife, who had a really good job, her job was better than my job, to be honest, but to have her quit her job so that she could be at home with the kids full time. We had one daughter and one on the way. That was what she wanted to do. But financially, we were, it's like we wanted certain things that we needed the money for. And it was like, am I going to lead in such a way to where I want the things that I want for myself? Or am I going to be willing to sacrifice that extra income and make make the adjustments that need to be made so that we can live that way, so that my wife can be at home with my kids. And we made that decision early on, and it was not a hard decision because we were both on board with it, but the ramifications of it were difficult.
Yeah.
And we had to really work through the challenges that came on a single income house.
Yeah.
But I've got adult kids now. I've got grandkids now.
Yep.
And my wife and I never look back with any regret on that decision, ever. And so that's a decision that you're trusting the process. We trusted that, hey, we're going to actually step into less money, single income, and the challenges and the sacrifices that requires for the benefit of our family.
Not instant gratification.
No instant gratification. In fact, instant,
struggle.
Instant, like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the cars, it affected the cars we drove, the trucks, the trucks that I drove. It affected where we lived.
So good.
It affected where we went shopping, how we spent money, all of those things. But we were never without.
Yeah.
We never struggled like the rest of the world struggles. We were so blessed.
Yeah.
And we never regretted it.
And you experienced joy.
So much joy.
Yeah.
And now so much reward.
Yeah.
And, in that moment, though, it's like, what decision are we going to make? We trusted the process, that the heart behind I will decrease so that my family will increase.
Yeah.
Never regretted it.
And is that something that you had to put on every day? Like, as the days went, the process continued.
Yeah. It was actually, that's a great question, Will, because it was hard at times.
Yeah.
I had buddies that were buying new trucks.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Bro.
Yeah.
I had, friends that would buy new rifles. They'd have like multiple guns. And I had my shotgun, my rifle, and my handgun. And it was like, I couldn't afford to go out and buy a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
And I, not that we were without, like I'm saying, we were super blessed, but when you're comparing yourself to the guys,
you were making sacrifice that others weren't.
Yeah. I mean, like the amount of square footage you can afford compared to, other people was limited.
Well, and I think wherever you're at in life, that comparison's always going to be there too.
There's always going to be somebody better off than you.
Yeah, whatever stage you're at.
Yeah.
Whether you're in poverty, middle class, rich.
Yep.
Like there's always going to be someone to compare to that could steal your joy if you let it. So.
Yeah. So the heart behind this though is that I'm willing to decrease.
Yep.
I must decrease so that my family may increase. And in that place, there's no balance of like, it's like, this is not balancing. This is flowing with the decisions that you're in, discerning, like we talked about last episode, you're discerning the season you're in and making decisions based upon where you're at. And so, but you're trusting that process.
Yep.
So you're seeing it in Jesus, you're seeing it in the lives of the men around you who've gone before you.
Yep.
And then you're stepping into this decision-making process where your heart says, I'm going to sacrifice myself so that I can actually bless the ones around me and so I can fulfill the assignment of God on my life. And you're trusting that as you do that, that God's going to take care of you.
Yeah. And I just feel to encourage guys, when you're in the process, look for the small wins.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be around you. Those small wins. It might not be the great big payoff reward that you have in your head, but God's moving in that entire process. There's going to be these small little victories, wins that keep showing up every day and give you that encouragement to just keep moving forward within that life of surrender.
Yeah. That is such a key, Will, because the blessings that you can count every day, no matter what the conditions are remarkable.
Yeah.
And the blessings that we find in being men of integrity, being men of character, men who are on assignment, there's no more joy that you find in life knowing that you're walking on the path that you were made to walk on.
Yeah.
There's no more peace that comes from knowing that no matter what the storms bring, the challenges bring, that you're going in the right direction. And there's peace in that. There's joy in that. It doesn't come from the pursuit of self.
Yeah.
The pursuit of self is very much you're getting it all right in that moment, and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It does not sate the appetite that we have for fulfillment. It does not. It always over promises and under delivers.
Yeah, the reward's a counterfeit.
Yeah.
It's not a true reward, true treasure.
Right.
That living a life of sacrifice brings.
That's right. So for guys out there, you're trusting the process, and then you're surrendering to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've stepped into it, you're surrendering to it.
Yep.
And this is where that avoiding, comparing, and contrasting is huge.
Yeah.
You're not allowing what other people's journey and the path that they're on, you're not allowing that to sabotage what God's doing in you and through you. You're not allowing that to cause you to reroute, when your GPS reroutes you and it's like rerouting. You're not constantly rerouting because of, oh, that guy did this and I really want that, or he bought that, or he made that much money, or no. Yeah, you're on the path that you need to be on, and you stick with that and you surrender to that. And it's about obedience.
Yep.
It's about faithfulness. It's about resilience and fortitude. All of those words that are hard words
mm-hmm.
that we like to kind of talk about, that make us feel good as men, but are really hard to live out. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
You do that day in and day out.
Yeah.
Day in and day out. Day in and day out. And it's always a place of, I must decrease that my business may increase, my family may increase, my wife may increase, my community may increase.
Yep.
But what happens though is that as you do that on the daily, and that becomes your lifestyle, that becomes the way you live your life.
Yeah, your heart position. That's where you're at.
You're actually reshaping and rewiring what brings you joy.
Yeah.
Because it's not like this is a daily miserable existence for you.
No.
But rather, you begin to find joy inexpressible, the Bible calls it. It's like there's a level of joy that you can't even express that comes from laying your life down for your family.
Yeah.
Laying your life down for your friends. Building a business where you take great care of your people.
Yeah, and there's a peace that surpasses understanding.
Yeah.
That this life brings. I mean, a life of sacrifice might not sound fun or enjoyable, but you find peace in it and enjoyment, and it does bring forward joy, like what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can walk this life with joy that's not dependent upon any conditions or circumstances. Mm-hmm. We can live life with peace that actually allows us to be calm and peaceful during the greatest storms that we encounter. And it's not conditionally based. It's based upon where our heart's at and what we know to be true. And so for our listeners out there, it's like, begin to step into what you know what you know to be true. What you've seen other men do, you've seen their sacrifice, you've seen the way they've laid their lives down. Begin to step into those opportunities for you to lay your life down. How can you serve the people around you more? How can you lay your life down for your wife, your children, your family, your community? And as you step into that, you begin to get used to what's at one point very uncomfortable becomes very comfortable. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like in construction, you get these young guys that start in carpentry, framing, right? And they want to take their nail bags off every 10 minutes because their nail bags are uncomfortable. You wear these nail bags that typically weigh somewhere right around 20 pounds, 25 pounds, depending on what you got in them. But, you got all your hand tools and your nails and the different things that you need for your work. You've got them in your nail bags and you're carrying those around your waist all day. Some guys use suspenders, some guys don't. But when you first start that work, it feels like it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And guys will be like you'll be like, hey, go grab some lumber. And so they'll take their bags off to go get some lumber.
Yeah.
They'll take their bags off to go to the van and get an extension cord. And you're like, no, leave your bags on, because it takes too much time to take them on and off.
Yep.
And so you teach these guys to wear their bags all day except on breaks. And then ultimately within about 2 weeks, you get used to it and you don't even know they're on. In fact, you don't even have to look where the tools are at because you've gotten so comfortable with your bags.
Yeah.
And you've adjusted. And it's that same way with living a life of sacrifice and surrender. What starts off as very uncomfortable becomes comfortable.
Yeah.
To where it's like, right now, like you've mentioned that you're doing your firefighting, and that's a third of your time. Every third day you work a 24-hour shift, but then also to help better provide for your family, you've taken on some contracting roles as well as a general contractor. And so you're actually working extra work. You're doing extra work to provide for your family.
Yeah.
And I know that's a very specific decision that you and your wife have made for this season. But, you're on shift and you don't sleep at all one night because you got call after call after call. You get done that shift, and then that next morning, you get off at 7 from your shift. You've been up all night. Then you get in your truck, and then you're driving to your next job.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It is a life of sacrifice, and it's not easy, but that's why the ability to discern between what God is calling you to do is super key.
Yeah.
And knowing that he's calling me to more,
Yeah.
and he does give me like strength.
Right.
He does give me the ability to take on these tasks when other guys are just going home to sleep or nap. It's like, would that be nice? Yeah. But my schedule's also booked out for the next 2 weeks, and I can't say no. I'm not going to show up and go home and sleep.
Totally.
What does that sound like?
Right.
No. But he gives me strength. He gives me peace, like I said, that surpasses understanding.
Yeah.
That he gives me drive and vision for me and my family that I know is true. I know is coming from him, and because of the strength that he gives me through these moments, it's like it's all him.
Yeah.
And he gets all the glory.
Right.
And there is immeasurable joy in those times.
Yeah.
The time that I get to spend with my family is absolutely amazing. We're not missing out on anything. I'm not missing out on anything, but there is sacrifice there.
Yeah.
There is a life of surrender.
Right.
And it's just, you got to be able to discern between what you're called to.
Right.
And to follow through, to keep showing up, keep saying yes.
Yeah.
Keep putting on that heart posture of surrender daily.
Right. That's right.
And sacrificing yourself, your own selfish desires, selfish ambitions, your flesh, putting that to the side and putting on your spirit.
Yeah. That's
bringing
right.
your spirit forward.
Yeah.
Knowing what you're called to do. And
Yeah. It's so good. And there's a commonality between what you and your wife are seeing that allows you guys to make those decisions that bring you to that place of sacrifice. And it's based upon a vision that you two have for your lives.
Yeah.
And so for the guys out there listening right now, it's like, we're talking a lot about the heart behind why we do what we do, why we make the decisions to sacrifice and to take on the assignments and to fulfill them well. And it starts with a vision, though, that God puts in us for what he could do in us and through us.
Yeah.
And it's way bigger than we are. And it goes way beyond what we can do on our own. And so in that place, he gives us a vision that we can keep in front of ourselves, that we're actually we're building towards that vision. We're working towards fulfilling that vision. But then he's sustaining it the entire way with us. And so when we're physically tired, he actually gives us grace to keep going.
Yeah.
We can do way more than we think we can.
Yep.
When we're frustrated in the process, he brings opportunity for rest and for us to get adjustments, in our thinking and in our physical bodies and our souls and our spirits. He's always providing everything we need in the process. And so that, along with that, that in that place of trust, it's like, Lord, I'm taking these things on knowing that I am not enough to be able to do this on my own. But I know that as you see me honoring you and being obedient to your assignment on my life, that you're going to sustain and help me through this, give me everything I need in order to accomplish the assignment that's on my life. And so picture yourself in 20 years from now. Picture your two kids that you have right now as in their early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to date other people and they're starting to plan for the future. And you and Sydney are beginning to start that next season of life. And imagine then what it will be like knowing that now you're making decisions that impact that point in the future.
Oh yeah.
And so we're not living for today. We're living for what's next. We're living for the future, for the vision that we have for this life. And ultimately, it goes even beyond that to where we're living for eternity.
Yeah.
Because, we don't have any control over tomorrow. But today we live in such a way to where we're laying our lives down, we're trusting the process, and ultimately, our vision is for eternity.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yep.
Not even tomorrow. And so when we live in the moment and we take the time to sacrifice and to do the things that we need to do, to work hard, to spend time building our marriages and our homes and all that involves, that you are building something that's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And what joy there is in that, and what peace there is on the hardest days when you're like, I don't have anything left in the tank and I've given it my all. I need a break, whatever. On those days, you'll know that you're doing the right thing, right? Because God's going to sustain you through it and it'll all be worth it in the end. And just like that gardener taking and preparing the soil and planting the seeds, he's going to check he's going to check that garden every day for 3 or 4 weeks, maybe.
Yep.
And then he's going to see a little bit of green pop
Just
up.
a little sprout.
And that's all it takes to be like, yes.
Yep.
And then you see that grow and then give fruit.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at the tension between in the daily demand on your time and attention and how you manage that tension, manage it by stepping into the things that you know you need to do with all your heart and really trusting the process and being like, okay, I know that as I'm making my decisions today, that my decisions today are actually impacting my future all the way into eternity.
Yeah.
And so we're not building for the moment. We're not sleeping in because we want 15 extra minutes of sleep. And we're not giving it 50% at work. We're not coming home and giving our wives just the remains of what's left of us, but we're giving them our best.
Yeah. We're bringing it our all.
We're bringing it. Yeah.
To everything.
Yes. So it's so good. It's great to talk about, challenging to live out, but when you live it out, so fulfilling, so worthwhile. Nothing else is like it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we're going to leave it today is being able to see what Jesus did, how he lived, and how other men before us have lived.
Mm-hmm.
Step into that process and trust it. And then surrendering to it on the daily.
Yeah.
As we look forward with vision, and then we begin to see the uncomfortable become comfortable, and we begin to see these sprouts of green pop up above the surface, and then all of a sudden you're seeing your kid make a good decision.
Yeah. That fruit is so good
so
too.
good.
It's so good.
It's so good. You're starting to see that love in your marriage really develop, and you've got each other's back, and it's growing and maturing. And so I want to encourage all of our listeners out there that it's worth it.
Yep.
It's totally worth it.
100%.
So keep managing that tension, keep stepping into it, keep laying your life down. And just, if that phrase will drive your decision making, I must decrease that they may increase.
Yep.
And let that drive your decision making when you're confronted with that tension for your time and attention.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. I love these talks.
Yeah. It's so important too. I mean, it's one of those things where we see this practically in the life of the people all around us.
Yeah.
And you see the people who made the decision to sacrifice and lay their lives down, and then you see the decisions for the people who decided to pursue their own interests, their own desires. And not that everyone's appears to be miserable who pursues themselves, but you just see the breakdown of it over time, and you see the breakdown of it in society as a whole.
Yeah.
And there's a need for men to rise up now who are willing to say, I'm willing to put the effort in, knowing that there's a reward in the end. I'm willing to pay now so that I can play later, like John Maxwell says, right?
Yes. Love that.
I'm willing to sow now so that I can reap later, who have long-term vision and who actually live today for eternity.
Yeah.
That's the kind of men we need right now.
Yep.
We need those men to rise up. And so that's the heart behind mastering the daily grind.
Yeah.
Why do we do what we do? And I feel like that's that line there is going to keep us and keep us on in our lane, on track, growing, always moving forward. I must decrease so that they can increase.
Yeah, and as men, I think this is the most challenging thing that we face. I think that's why so many guys come up to you. It's because it's a challenge that we all face.
Yeah.
You and me face it daily.
Absolutely. That's right. And Jesus faced it.
Yep.
John the Baptist faced it.
Yep.
Our forefathers faced it. And, it's part of it. And you look at all the things that have been done, not with today in mind, but eternity in mind. And it's pretty powerful. So we're part of that process. We're part of that legacy. And so we want to step into it. And, when we do that, we're going to see our family lines change. We're going to see our next generations change.
Yeah.
And we're going to see ultimately our communities be better off for it as men like that rise up. So very good. And, in order to do that, we've got to continue to take good care of ourselves and have that same type of a mindset when it comes to our overall health and strength, body, soul, and spirit.
Yep.
So before we end today, just want to send out an encouragement. Keep investing into your health.
Mm-hmm.
Your family needs you healthy. They need you strong. They need you capable. So invest into your physical health. Invest into your emotional health, your soul.
Be vulnerable.
Be vulnerable. Take the time. Trust the process. And as well, build your faith. And we want to be men of strength and capability, not only physically, but emotionally, spiritually, in every area of our life. And so I'm excited because we've got this leadership intensive that we're hosting coming up on March 8th. And this is going to be a regional intensive for men in the Northwest, because we want to begin to take back areas in our communities, areas in our region that have been lost when it comes to godly influence, when it comes to the way our cities are run, the way our cities are led. Yeah. And so in order to do that, we've got to invest into the leaders of the region. And that's what we're going to do. So this leadership intensive is on March 8th. you can check out the website for more information there. But it's going to be a powerful day with leaders from the business sector, military, law enforcement, first responders. We've got leaders from around the community coming in to help equip and train up our young guys and our young leaders.
Yeah.
Really, leaders at any age will benefit from this. But
there's no prereqs.
We're going to have some general sessions with some great speakers. We're going to have some breakout sessions covering specific topics in different areas of leadership. So it's going to be a very engaging, very kinetic day. It's going to be a great day, though, to connect with other men, to invest into your leadership, and to really grow and see what will happen as we step into the assignment of God on our lives in this region.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. So mark your calendars for March 8th. We'll have more information as that day gets closer. And then again, we'll be back next week with the podcast, continuing to provide building blocks for you and your leadership so that you can level up as a leader.
Yeah. About the leadership intensive, I just want to let guys know that even if you are the low man at your work, you will benefit from this.
Yep.
It is so beneficial for your leader, for you to understand these leadership principles and to understand what they're going through and to apply that to your work. It'll only benefit your team. So if you are a part of a team and you are the lowest man, still come learn these principles and apply them and just know what your leaders are going through, because the crew dynamic will greatly benefit from whatever you gain.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always a good time to invest in your leadership.
Yeah.
No matter how old you are.
Yep.
And no matter what your position is.
Workplace, could be for your marriage, could be for your kids, could be for so many aspects of your life that we need to step into leadership roles. So please come. Don't shy away from it.
Join us. It's going to be a great day. We'll have more information on the website. We'll get a link in the bio, that type of thing. So, or in the description.
Good.
So, all righty. Well, good. Well, Will, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for you guys who've joined us in the conversation. We hope it's helping you with your mindsets and with the way you think and make decisions. As always, it's our privilege to be a part of this with you on your journey. And until next week, stay on the path.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll be on YouTube now. And I think there's spots on Spotify where you can comment, but comment, prayer requests, anything, testimonies, insight, whatever. We are open for it. So
absolutely. Very good. All right. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, John.